So I want to welcome you to Hawaiian IANDS. I'm Sean Lether. And tonight's guest is, have you ever met somebody and you instantly knew that you knew them before? Well, that's what happened to me at the IANDS conference in September when Joshua Zuchter walked into the Experiencers Lounge. And it was as if I was seeing an old friend again, and we had this instant connection. And not only that, but Joshua calls it linking up, but for me, we were just psychically connecting, and we were having these multiple conversations just through our minds. And so I am so thrilled to have him join us tonight. Joshua is an international life coach and leading biohacker. He is a master specialist in understanding and teaching about consciousness, the human mind, behavior, optimized communication, nutrition, and relationship dynamics, and how they all work together. Joshua is into the leading edge of physical health research and fitness. He sometimes binge watches CrossFit championships, is big into improving his mind by doing Sudoku and playing online Battleship to enhance his psychic capabilities. Joshua is fascinating, wise, and very silly. Please join me in welcoming my new old friend, Joshua Zuchter. Joshua, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I want to say hello to everyone. I already actually took a quick look at your photos, and we'll talk about that. So if you've kind of hidden yourself or you're open to showing you to me, that's fantastic. Don't feel obligated, but if you're called to, feel free. So my goodness, here we are. It is an honor for me to connect with you. The whole IANDS thing was new to me actually as of this past year. So I had no idea IANDS existed. And I was a big fan of Walter Russell. I'm not sure if you know who that is, but feel free to research him. He went through a period of illumination every 7 years, and he had his own death experiences, and he came to understand the whole universe as one thing. And so he wrote a book, which is my #1 book of all time that I've read, and it's called The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe. So I'm a big fan of that book. And PMH Atwater and I connected with her at one point, and she was speaking to an audience that knew about Walter Russell. And so I basically I contacted her, and while we were talking, she mentioned about children and babies that have near-death experiences. And that was the first time in my life that I kind of, the whole puzzle was put together for me. And I realized in that moment that that's likely what happened for me. It explains lots of things about me that when I was younger, I had no idea why I could do the things, or why I was the way I was, why I could do the things that I could do. And as a child, I mean, an example was when I was 5, I told my mother that I used to be a painter. And she said, "Oh, really? When was that?" Like, right, yeah. When was that? And as a 5-year-old child, I didn't have the word reincarnation, obviously. And I knew that the only way I could explain this to her in a way that she would understand is I said to her, I used to be a painter before I grew up, grew down, and grew up again. And that was a 5-year-old's way of saying, in a previous lifetime, I was a painter. And so from when I was really young, I've always had these kind of unusual things about me. I saw spirits. I could feel how people felt. I would see people smiling, but I knew deep down they weren't actually feeling it. So I was quite confused by this as a 5, 6-year-old. To give you a little bit more backstory, I was quite upset. I hope all this resonates with you, but I was quite like an angry little child because I was actually quite disappointed in the life that I created. And I thought everyone else was like me. I assumed everyone could do what I did. And I came to discover that there were not as many around me that could, almost no one could do this. And when I said I saw these spirits, no one believed me. So this is a very common theme in the life of clairvoyants when they're born or when they're children. And for me, the kind of unusual part was I never turned any of these things off. So most children turn off all of these we all turn off, many turn off these capabilities. And for me, I never did, except for there was one exception. That's when my mother and I watched a horror film when I was 6. And as soon as I did that, I stopped seeing spirits, but I still felt them. And it wasn't for another like 12 years when that turned back on to a degree. But giving you this backstory about, I had all these kind of weird things that I could do, and I assumed everyone was like this. And I think it's useful to know that because it wasn't until I met PMH that I realized as a child or a baby, and I think I was a newborn. I think I actually either had a death experience in the womb or I had it immediately within hours of being born. And one of the odd things about that is that when you have this happen, I've now discovered it's like having one foot on the other side and one foot here. And that's both a blessing and a curse. The blessing with that is that I had access to all these incredible capabilities from the other side. The challenge was that I was confused. I was still in human form. There were a lot of misinterpretations. So, and this is going to lead us eventually into this discussion of what is the soul and what is the ego. I went to a religious school in elementary school, and I remember our teachers teaching us about religion, about what God was. And I knew when I was 6, and I'm listening to my teachers tell me what God and heaven is, that they really didn't have any clue what they were talking. They had been taught this, that it was coming from what they've been taught, not from what they knew deep inside of them. And I mean, I was 6 and I got this. So that was a very tricky experience because, and I'm going to share, this is kind of one of the more significant teachings that I've discovered, is that when we're born, we typically, all beings, we look for wisdom and we look for love. We look to be loved unconditionally. And we typically look to our mother for unconditional love, and we look to our father for wisdom. It doesn't have to go that way. We look for wisdom from both and love from both. But the majority of the world doesn't even know what unconditional love itself is. So what ends up happening is generation to generation teaches conditional love. And so then that just continues down the line. So that's what contributed to me being frustrated, because I had a sense of what those were, and I realized I did not attract that in this life. And so that led to enormous frustration. Normally in workshops that I give, I never talk about myself, FYI. So this is rare for me and slightly uncomfortable or unnerving for me to even tell you about these things, because normally, I mean, I don't need to hear these things. I already know them, so I don't need to tell myself these stories. I share them with you in the hopes that they're of value to you and useful for you somehow. I actually love giving workshops, and my preference is normally workshops where we interact. So this is going through webinar is not my typical format, so please be gentle with me this evening. So the whole idea behind this workshop is to discover or explore what is soul and what is ego. And I had a quote that I posted in the description, and there was already one individual who kind of questioned that a little bit, and it made it seem like I was knocking the ego. And I can tell you now that couldn't be further from the truth. The title, a part of the title, is the profound nature of the soul and the ego. It's not the profound nature of the soul and the horridness of the ego. It's the profound nature of the soul and ego. So I wanted to clarify that right away. Second, I wanted to say that everything that I'm expressing here is my own experience. And I don't expect, or I'm not attached to you taking on anything that I believe or say. And I honor that everyone has their own experience. So I want to mention that as well. So some more of the backstory. I was really lucky, fortunate, because when I was 16, I was dating a girl who had a photographic memory. She could remember what was on page 23 of her biology textbook, line 2, word 6. And I thought, oh my God, I'd love to be able to do this. So I asked my chiropractor in the small town that I was from, did he know of anyone who was in the city who could teach me how to develop a photographic memory like her? It turned out he did. He knew of someone that worked with his kids. And so I ended up contacting her, and she became my mentor for 5 years. So every 2 weeks for 5 years, when I was 16 through till 21, I studied about the mind, the subconscious, nutrition, health. And she was like my Obi-Wan Kenobi, if you understand the reference to Star Wars. One day I asked her a spiritually related question, and she said, I think you need to speak with my friend Faye. And Faye then became my second spiritual mother, but she was my Yoda, essentially. So for 8 years, every week, I studied with her in a small group, and we learned about how to connect with our angels, our guides. So this is weekly for 8 years. And it was like coaching. I guess you could call it like coaching, guiding. But the whole idea behind it was encouraging us to discover our own answers, to go inside of ourselves. Now, fortunately, I was already pretty strongly connected. But having those two individuals as my mentors gave me a very strong foundation, and it supported me throughout my career, my life, and I think being rooted in who I am. And there are many speakers in this field who tend to become like rock stars, and unfortunately they don't have foundations, and that's why they kind of sometimes lose their path. But the cool part about this is we always have access to who we are. Always. Every second of every day for our entire life. Who we are is always accessible to us. So this journey really starts actually in the womb. Think about, I don't know if you have children, but when we're in the womb, that environment is cozy, dark, warm, quiet. And when we're born, we're all of a sudden we go through this traumatic experience where we're blinded by light, we're overwhelmed by sound, we all of a sudden feel cold temperature. We are, for the first time, to a degree, disconnected or separated from our mother. And this is generally the first massive moment of transformation where the concept of separation is created in our psyche. And that begins to form the basis of the ego, if we're wondering what the ego is. So we're connected. We're not consciously cognizant of that, but we are naturally connected. But at the same time, we start to begin this movement down a path of separateness. And as we go through childhood, we start asking a lot of why questions. We want to understand everything. We need to learn how to communicate in order to move through life. And that form of communication is a part of what leads to what we call our identity or our self-concept. So as this unfolds, we develop more and more and more of this identity. We're given a label, we're told who we are, we're told what our culture is, we're told what our background is, and we go through this experience, and as a result of going through that, we generally start to move away from that connection within us, and we start to move more into this identity. We become the ultimate actors because we now are beginning to take form in this identity that we're taught. And if we don't have a strong awareness, if we're not encouraged with awareness throughout life, then we can really become disconnected, misaligned with who we actually truly are. Then we get into a scenario where down the road we feel like something's wrong, or we don't feel great about something, and it usually, when people get to their darkest place, that's when we're usually thrust into discovering spirituality. And what is spirituality really? So what I'm going to ask you for a moment without me speaking, what if you would take a moment and maybe write this down? You may wish to write it down, or even feel free to put it into the messages. What do you think spirituality is? What is spirituality to you? What is spirituality to you? What do you think spiritual means? David says connection with divine. Yep, nice. Know thyself, I love it. Yep. Everything and anything. Yep, beautiful. So when I was born and all the way through, I've always known what I was, who I was. And I never lost that connection. I was fortunate that way. But it was challenging because I presumed everyone else knew that. And virtually no one else knew that. And then there were people that said they knew it and they didn't know it. They knew it intellectually. They had an idea intellectually of what it was, but I could feel that they didn't feel what it was. And I promise you, that is what everyone is seeking. That is the one thing that everyone is seeking. And the irony is it's always within us. It's never not within us. So the question is, how do we connect with that part of us? And what are the qualities of that part of us? Because it will help us to kind of move more into alignment with that part. So I love to do this. I love to kind of have this idea of a stream. Imagine a stream. And we're either in the stream or we're out of alignment with the stream. We're going to talk about the qualities of the stream. As we move into alignment with the stream, we gain all the benefits of that stream. And as we move out of alignment with that stream, we temporarily misplace or pause all those beautiful qualities. So the further away we go from it, the less we experience those qualities. And the more we move into alignment with it, the more we experience those qualities. So let's discuss what are the qualities that, in my experience, we're going to talk about these. And I highly recommend, if you have a sheet of paper, if you have a document, or if you have like an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document or anything you can write on. I have all my clients go through this where we have a line down the page, and I love to make, it doesn't matter which one you do, but you have maybe the left is the ego and the right is soul. Now, by the way, there are people that are atheists that don't necessarily even believe in a soul, and that's okay. So the whole idea is we have clarity and we have cloudiness. we don't even have to call it soul and ego. We can call it clarity and cloud. And it really means the same thing anyway. So we're going to go through these qualities, and we're going to go bounce back and forth a little bit to compare them. And I welcome your comments, and please feel free to put your questions as well. If any questions come up, just put them in the chat. And near the end of the workshop, we're going to go through those. Let's go back to a few things that you said, what spiritual is, vibrational body. Spirituality is a pretty broad subject. In this moment, to me, spirituality is how we connect to the deepest part of ourselves, connecting with God's spirit, connecting with meaning, and connecting and caring for ourselves and others. Spirituality can mean so many things. Absolutely, it does, totally. And that's why, so as we go through these, this will help us. I've found that many people misperceive what the soul is. And the irony behind it is a person has to be connected to it in order to know what it is. So if I say this is what the soul is, you would say, no, I don't think so. And that's possible. If I'm not really connected, I'm just listing these things off, it means nothing. So what matters is whether I'm connected and actually feel those things, whether they're true or not. So that inner part of me recognizes what those qualities are. And so I just say, just do your best with this. And again, there's no right or wrong. So I'm open. By the way, I'm also open to being completely wrong in every way. So I'm going to put that out there too. So when we're talking about when we're born, believe it or not, this is to me, it's so crazy. We are born omnipotent. We are omnipotent. Omnipotent means all powerful. 6.5 years ago, I'm a big fan of Abraham Hicks. And if you could type in the chat box, yes, if you know who Abraham Hicks is. Law of attraction. To me, they're the purest teachers of law of attraction on the planet. And I had studied their material for a year back in 2000. And then I kind of just let it go. I just kind of paused it. And it wasn't until 6.5 years ago that I began really practicing some of the techniques that they teach. They call them rampages. Rampages are these out loud exercises that you kind of like personal pep talks. And I was really committed at that time to practicing abundance and prosperity. And I had lived a very topsy-turvy life financially. So at one point I was evicted. At one point I was eating peanut butter and jam sandwiches every day for lunch and dinner because I couldn't afford anything else. Now they were organic. Some people say they were organic. That's why I was almost bankrupt, but no, that's not why it was. But I was eating that and evicted. And within a couple of months, I completely turned around my whole situation by doing some of those exercises. Now, I'm happy to go a little bit into that, but 6.5 years ago, I fully committed to abundance. And I did this exercise for 10 minutes, out loud, talking with myself about abundance, prosperity. And I got into the highest state, blissful state I had ever been in my entire life. And out of nowhere, I felt this calling to go to clear my inbox of emails and just clear it. So I started going through my emails and clearing them. And as I was going through them, I got to these 2 emails from this one person named Helen that I hadn't spoken with in 3 years. I called her immediately, and within 10 minutes, she was telling me about this financial opportunity. And I immediately said yes, because I was in this high place. And within 7.5 months, I was semi-retired. So what happened when I did that exercise, I went full alignment with Abraham. I began channeling Abraham. I also went full alignment with abundance, which basically they're the same thing. And I also, interestingly, went full alignment with no more aging. So believe it or not, we are at a place in our evolution as humans that we actually don't need to age anymore. In other words, we can retain incredible health and retain it for as long as we choose. And all these three things happened at the same time for me 6.5 years ago. So that was kind of like one of the greatest awakenings I've had in my life. I didn't have that when I was younger. So despite me being somewhat connected to the other side, I was not connected to abundance. And so it was what happened 6.5 years ago that shifted me. And so why am I mentioning this? Because that was a huge part of me coming to the awareness that if I do this exercise now, and I mean, since then, I would do a 20-second exercise. I would do it for 20 seconds. And I've already had at least 100 things. I stopped counting. 100 things would show up within 20 seconds. And I've been teaching these things to my clients, and they have these things happening now. So when you have this thing that happen, right? When you have a, let's say, for example, there's something important that I want. It could be as deep as world peace. It could be as shallow as a new car. It doesn't matter everything is the same in that way. It's all the same. But when you realize you can do these things, you actually realize, we begin to realize when we do those things, when you can think about something you want and within 20 seconds it shows up in your physical reality. And it happens over and over and over and over and over. You realize there's no limits. There's no limits. So we start off the list of soul. We'll go down the soul column. The soul is the part of us that is omnipotent, all powerful. It's also omniscient, all knowing. It is also omnipresent, which is in all places all at once. What does omnipresent really mean? So it means that, I mean, here I am with you in webinar, right? We're not in each other's physical presence. However, if you want to do something and just shake your head, I'm gonna have to actually do this. Is something where I'm gonna have to actually figure out how I can do this. And also I'm gonna be doing this with people who, this is something I've never done before. I was kind of guided on how to do this earlier today. This is for people that are watching through YouTube later. So if you nod, I'm gonna need a nod or a hand wave. And I'm gonna have to see you. So I'm gonna actually change my view to gallery. And so I'm going to ask for anyone who'd like to experience this. Michelle is up for anything. And this is what happened for Sean and I. So I walked into the Experiencer Lounge and I sat down. This is at the IANDS conference. And I look at Sean and all of a sudden, boom, we're locked into each other. We're literally locked into each other's systems. Systems, which means mind, soul, heart, being. We were just locked in. I call it LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, the the other LinkedIn. And so we had this happen, and we both knew that it was happening. We both felt it. And so this is something I've never done before, but I'm happy to do this with you while we're on a Zoom webinar. So, and it's highly personal, where it's directly you and I. Now, anyone else who's intuitive or psychic or aware, you're empathic, you might be able to feel it happening. So, anyone wanted? Well, I know Michelle was already up for it. Okay, Michelle, Julie, Diane. Okay, so let me start with. Oh, hold on. The camera's moving. Let me go to Michelle, and I'm gonna just I've got to see if I can pin you. Hope you don't feel this. Okay, here we go. And see, we've already done this before. So it's really just as basic as, what, right, right. right? What is this? What are we doing? We are completely opening ourselves up to each other on a deep level. On it, this is what I call spiritual. Yeah. Right? I like your heart better. Okay, so we'll have to do that again. Thank you, by the way. That's sweet. And okay, let me remove pin. Hello, Melissa. My God, we have to. You're all good for making this workshop 7 hours? Is that good for everyone? You're all good for 7 hour. 7 hour. Sean had no idea I was going to do this. I had no idea I was going to do this, and but okay, Melissa, I've got you pinned here. Nice, nice, right? Nice. What would 10% more than that be like, Melissa? 10% more than that, even. It's 10%. Nice. Like lit up almost, like, right? A little bit more lit up somehow. All right. Okay, thank you. Okay, now, let me see, remove pin. All right, Glenda, here we go. Let me pin you. What is going to happen? What is going to happen? Nice, right there. Feel that? Did you feel that right there? Yeah, nice. I know, right? I know. So this is not me, this is you opening up to the more of the fullness of who you are. That's what this is. And then I, being connected to who I am, we both have our connections to this, and we're all connected up here. So I can feel that connection that you're tuning into. That's how this is working. Do you get that? Everyone get that? Shake your heads. If yes, no, yeah, all good. Right? Right? Isn't that cool? Isn't that amazing? Okay. Big heart. Thank you for being open. Love you much. Mwah. Okay. I'm gonna remove pin. So now just give me a second, just making sure. So let's continue on. Let's continue on. Soul and ego. So other qualities of soul. Okay, so of course, what did we just experience? We kept doing this. So the soul is love. The soul is love. So love comes from the soul. So if this stream of soul exists and we get more and more into the stream, we feel more and more love. And as we come out of the stream, we feel less and less love for others and ourselves. So it's really just this thing of ideally moving more into the stream. So when we think about those individuals, and feel free to raise your hand if you've had an NDE specifically, because those that have had NDEs, I'm going to just speak to those individuals. I'm going to go to gallery view really quickly. You're welcome, Melissa. So just raise your hand if you've had an NDE. Okay. Okay. I'm just scanning. Scan one more. Hold your hand up again. Okay, Felice, I see you. We barely spoke at the conference, but I saw you. But nice to see you. Diane, gotcha. Carol. Okay. Okay. So thank you, everyone, for holding your hands up. So I want to speak to this. So what happens for people that experience NDEs? And you can put your hands down now if you like. What happens is when a person goes NDE to the other side and they come back, generally speaking, layers of ego are wiped away. Wiped away. So what ends up happening is we end up with more clarity because we don't have all that crud covering up our clarity, our connection. The problem is if someone was not spiritually aware before they had an NDE and they go through and then they come back, there's often more questions because this is a totally weird experience. Now they have one foot on the other side, one foot here, and that it can be incredibly confusing. For some, it's incredibly beautiful, and for others, it's incredibly confusing. But what I can tell you is, generally speaking, those that have had that have gone full on into the stream, generally, unless they've had it distressed. If someone's had a distressed NDE, then that's a slightly different story. But those that have had beautiful near-death experiences, you go fully into the stream. The problem is when you come back here, it's like going out of the stream again. And it's that process of going in and out like that, not as a baby or child, but as an adult, is quite traumatizing. And that's why there are so many individuals who go through near-death experiences that have such a hard time figuring out what happened, and it's just very challenging. So and here's the thing: if they were unaware of that soul experience here, and then you awaken to it, and then you come out of it again back in human form, there's always a desire to go back to this because this feels so much better than this. And so this is where it's at. This is where it's at. And by the way, this is where it's at for everyone, not just people who've had NDEs. This is where it's at for everyone on earth. It's here. It is here. So what are the qualities of here? You may want to write these down. This is where abundance is found. All abundance is here. Awareness is here. So if you're making notes, this is down the soul column. The soul is aware. The soul is conscious. The soul is creator. Let's temporarily go to the ego side. The ego side, on the other hand, is unaware. It's unaware. It is like a cat or dog chasing its tail in circles. It has no idea that it's doing this. The ego, and this gets even more interesting, the ego is all emotion, except for one. And this is the exception to emotion, if we can call it emotion, which is what we said is love. So we have love on this side, and then we have all emotions. So what kind of emotion? We have fear, we have anger, we have sadness, we have despair, we have worry, we have frustration. Is all down. We have, by the way, this is the weird part, we have excitement. Excitement even is ego, believe it or not. Even that is, no kidding. So as we go through these different columns, we can start to differentiate between these two. So let's continue down, let's say the soul column. Along with soul, with the love, omnipotence, creator, we also have active and proactive. On the ego side is passive and reactive. Passive and reactive. I'll give you, I'm going through this pretty quickly, so I see Melissa writing. I'm going to give you a few moments to catch up here. So we have down the left, let's continue on with ego. The ego is all identity, all masks that we wear, everything that we believe. Think about the word think. and the word believe, that's all intellectual. That's all down the ego column. Let's talk about emotions specifically with reference to the now. You know, Eckhart Tolle's work, The Power of Now, A New Earth. So when we think of those concepts, all emotion that involves future, like worry, anxiety or anxious, fear, those are all future-based emotion. All of that is ego. And all past related emotions, such as sad, angry, in despair, those are all in the past. Those are related to past experiences. In the soul column, everything is now. So this stream is it's all about presence. So the more present you are, the better you feel, because that is in this stream. The more out of the present moment we are, the worse we feel. That's where we get into emotion of future or past. Does that make sense? Everyone good with that? So this is significant because so in any moment, all you have to do is ask yourself, how do I feel right now? Do I feel good? Do I not feel good? And what does that tell me? It means I'm either aligned with the stream or I'm out of the stream. That is all it means. That is it. We talked about abundance. So if the soul were in physical form, it is prosperous. So in the soul column, we have prosperous, abundant. In the ego column, we have the antithesis of those. We have lackful, greed, envy, jealousy. I'm not painting a really nice picture of the ego. That's not my intention. It's just to give a context so that we're aware of when we're coming from one or the other. So the soul is this beautiful, heavenly, loving peace. Peace also comes from soul, peaceful. Peace comes from the soul. When you feel peaceful, it means you're coming more from the stream, from soul. Good? Good, good, good. Okay. So when I think about these concepts of soul and ego, in my opinion, honestly, I think this is the most important teaching that exists on earth, to be honest. Why do I say that? Because we are all searching for that pure positive stream. Every single being is wanting that. And I can tell you the only issue with this is that we're either aligned with it or we're not. And so when you've heard the term resistance, if you've heard Abraham talk about resistance, it is our natural state, by the way, to move into this. It is natural for us to be in the stream. That is our natural home. That is our authentic state. All day, every day. And if we're not living in that stream and we're out here, or the further out we are, the whole idea behind that is that we're actually resisting going into the stream. So it is natural. You may want to make a note. It is natural for us to move into the stream. If we're not in the stream, it means we must be resisting it somehow. Got it? So that's been my experience so far. When I went full alignment 6.5 years ago, I went into the stream and everything just naturally, easily was occurring. So let's add a couple more qualities. The soul is pure ease, ease. So easy, it's ease. And under ego, it's hard work, efforting, making things happen. You know, if we look at the most abundant people in the world, we look at the most prosperous, they are generally speaking not the hardest working people in the world. And when we look at the people who work the hardest, they are often the least wealthy people in the world. Why is that? That doesn't make any sense. Obviously, money doesn't come from work. So even when we were doing our Love Fest exercises, and some of you, I just said, just relax, just let go, because it is natural when we let go to feel the loving energy. Let's talk about the antithesis of love. So under ego, we also have controlling. The ego wants control. It wants to have control. It wants to control. And here's the craziest part. It never allows itself to have control. By virtue of, think about the idea of, I want $1 billion. If I say I want $1 billion, that means I don't have $1 billion. Make sense? Logical? So the soul is all about having. The soul creates the flow and receives the flow. The ego resists. The ego wants. All wanting comes from the ego. Now, this is where things become really fascinating. Where does the ego come from? Where does it come from in the first place? Like I said, we said it comes from separateness, and that's how it begins. And by the way, if we're going to mention separateness in the ego column, we're going to put oneness in the soul column. So the soul, you've heard these words, so we're going to make this big picture. The soul is about oneness, wholeness, beingness. So here's the irony behind this whole thing. Let me ask you this. If I say, if I touch your hand and I ask you, is this your body? Would you say, no, that's my hand? Or would you say, yeah, that's my body? What would you say? Put your answers in the chat. So if I tap on your hand, would you say, yes, that's my body? So is that your body? Who would say yes and no? Let's see who thinks that that's their body. Let's see if anyone's ego regenerative belief that we're really here. Yes. Great one, Mark. It's an extension. Dave, I love what Dave said. Yes, yep, part of my body. Okay, so this is where it gets fascinating, because despite all this negative crap about the ego, ego gets such a hard rap. And I mean, I've literally knocked the ego. It sounds like so badly in this, but it's fascinating to realize that the soul is what created the ego in the first place. The soul chose the ego before it even came. Anyone who's had an NDE who's really tuned into certain aspects of this will remember or realize that the soul created the entire identity exactly as it was created. It created the worry, the fear, the excitement. It created all of that. So despite us going through these columns of soul and ego and me saying, oh God, the ego has all these not so good qualities, the soul created that. So this is where the whole story kind of turns. So why on earth, why on heaven's earth would the soul create an ego? Why do you think? To learn, great thought, to help me fulfill my purpose and desire mission, great thought, to know myself, thyself, to feel. So this is what I came to discover, and let me know if this resonates with you. I'm going to come up with this silly example of John and Lisa. John and Lisa are neighbors, and they both have these pools in the back of their homes. John's pool, he's been swimming in for 20 years, and it's a pool of mud. And it's the only pool he's ever swum in, and he's only known that pool. And one day, Lisa comes over, and she says, hey, would you like to swim in my pool? And her pool is the most pristine, beautiful pool you've ever seen. And he goes over to her place, and he looks at her pool, and he says, what's wrong with your pool? And she says, what do you mean? This is like a pristine, perfect pool. He jumps in and has the most profound swim of his entire life. Who is going to appreciate Lisa's pool more? John or Lisa? John, right? Because he has the contrast, which is an Abraham concept. He has a contrast of what it's like to swim in this pool of mud and what it's like to swim in this beautiful, pristine pool. The soul creates the ego for the purpose of a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. The ego and soul is like the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. Do you think I don't know, we wouldn't know unless we tune into it, but when a caterpillar goes through its metamorphosis into a butterfly, do you think that's a really easy, light, joyful experience for that caterpillar? I don't know. Is it probably a little jarring? I'm assuming it's a little jarring. Probably, maybe, who knows? I mean, we're conjecturing about a caterpillar. I mean, who could, but the idea of the metamorphosis between the caterpillar to the butterfly is exactly what we go through in human form. So the soul inserts itself into this experience over and over and over and over and over as it evolves and evolves, evolves and evolves. And, I remember I used to believe that the soul is here for us to learn things. And then I had two mentors that told me, and it made much more sense. I mean, if you hear Abraham speak about this, Abraham says that we're not here to learn anything. We're not here to learn. We're here to experience joy. Our purpose is joy. Our purpose is pure joy. And if you think about it, the soul is all-knowing. It doesn't need to learn anything. It just wants to frolic. It just wants to enjoy existence. It just wants to experience. Now, the challenge is because we have the ability to choose and we can look at things in life that are working and not working, this is where it's tricky. How do we navigate that? If it were up to soul, we would live in here all the time. We would only stay in this place. However, we have the contrast, and that's all part of the law of attraction. So you'd have to start kind of listening to Abraham. If you're not familiar with Abraham Hicks, they're my favorite people on earth to listen to. I highly recommend going to YouTube and listening to Abraham Hicks videos. There's like thousands of free videos. My other mentor said the same thing, and that she was not a fan of Abraham. So these two individuals shared with me the same idea that we're not here to learn anything. Now think about learning. Learning also implies some effort, doesn't it? There is some effort in the idea of learning. And we just said that soul is about effortlessness. It's no effort. It's no effort. I came to discover 6.5 years ago, when I went into alignment with abundance, that it was beyond effortlessness. It required no effort by me. In fact, it was so shocking that abundance was flowing into my life at the rate that it was. All that was required was me being in the flow, in the stream. And it was effortless. And then here's the craziest part. I became to realize that whenever I efforted, things did not flow. They flowed less. Anyone resonate with that? Anyone ever experienced that? You're trying to make something happen or force something to happen. It's really not happening. And the more you try to make it happen, the less it works. And then all of a sudden you give up, and what happens? It works. Which we call that surrender. But really all it means is we stop resisting and then we just fall into the flow. And then we realize we fall into the flow and we say, oh my God, I fell into flow. I better get out again. I'm just being silly about that, but that is generally what happens in our psyches. Yes, Dave, Della, Diane, exactly. So I want to share those general ideas with you that I've discovered about this. I think now I want to share maybe another experience that I had. It's related to this and related to having the NDE. In 2009, I had read the book, The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe, for the 5th time. It's the only book I've read 5 times. Some say because it's only 54 pages, that's why I read it 5 times. But it's a very deep book. And I read that book and I was doing some writing, and all of a sudden, my emotions were split from my consciousness, and I went into a high state of peace and clarity. And in that moment, I became aware of what I consider to be the most profound wisdom that has ever been taught. I had gone through many years. I have insights all the time. I mean, honestly, okay. Let me say this. Let me go. How deep can I go here with you? I don't know any of you, so I don't really. I'm kind of living on the edge here. Um, here's an example. My former girlfriend. Please go deep. Okay. Um, my girlfriend in the year 2006. I said to her, this is going to be on YouTube now. I said to her, I can hear your thoughts. And she was like, baloney. She used a different word. And I said, think any thought and I'll tell you what it is. So she thought a word and I told her what it was. It was chocolate. Now, chocolate happens to be one of my few addictions. So you could say that was luck. But I knew that that's what it was. And she was like, oh, that was just lucky. I said, we'll do it again. Choose another word. And she chose a word, but I was trying to prove myself. And so now I started efforting, and I started to come out of that stream, and I couldn't get the word, but I explained to her, I said, okay, I lost I lost the word, but I proceeded to go through the whole process of her choosing the next word, exactly what her thoughts were in finding the next word. We are so capable. We are so capable. This is not just me that can do this. Anyone can do this. And by the way, it's not Josh that does it. It's the soul within Josh that does it. The power doesn't come from Joshua. The power comes from the soul, in my experience. There have been masters in history that have talked about the kingdom of heaven, talked about God in different ways. Why do those that have NDEs, when they go to the other side and come back, why do they have these capabilities? These capabilities or these gifts. And it's typically because they've now gone into alignment and connected with those capabilities. But it's not the individual, it's not the identity that has them. The individual's aligned with that part of them that has those capabilities now. They simply weren't aligned with those capabilities before. So that's what happens for many people who have NDEs. So I hope that's helpful. When I became aware of this, what I call Holy Grail, I didn't sleep for a week. And all aspects of my life changed. My finances exploded in a good way. I trimmed a ton of body weight. My friendships became closer. My sessions with my clients became more enhanced. And all of it came down to this idea. So I'm going to kind of really give you the nutshell. It's actually a full day workshop. But so in that moment, I was downloaded in 30 minutes, a whole full day workshop. I saw the whole thing. And I normally don't, I'm very cerebral. I don't do a ton of visuals, as you can tell. This is, there's not a lot of visuals here. But when that happened, I was given full visual workshop. We even in that workshop used 3D glasses. I actually found 3D glasses and had all the 90 people in the workshop wear 3D glasses in my workshop. And we did this really fun exercise. So these are the words that summarize that Holy Grail. Active. It's an acronym. Active. ACTIVE. Active, conscious thought. So active, conscious thought with intentionally varied engagement. Active. Active conscious thought with intentionally varied engagement. The essence of it is we are either in an active state or we are in a reactive state. Let me say this again. We're either in an active state or we're in, yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Sylvia. We're in an active state or we're in a reactive. Let me ask you this. You could be sitting here right now. Are you feeling things based on what's going on here? Are you feeling good because of what I'm saying? Are you feeling bored because of what I'm not saying? are you are you feeling, so what are you feeling? And this is where it gets crazy, because how often of our day are we in a state of reactivity? In other words, our feelings are determined by everything else happening around us. How much of our day do you think we live in that? Let's have you type in what you think in the chat box. How often, I see Nicole waving her, how often of the day do you think we're in a state, good one. How often do you think, what percent of that day do you think we're in a state of reactive to our environment? You watch a great play, you watch a movie, and you react. You watch a speaker that inspires you, you get a piece of mail that makes you feel not so good, something doesn't work out, makes you not feel good. So this is a big question, because active, on the other hand, so in the soul column, active means you choose how you feel. It means you choose. So if I say, Tom Hamblin, how are you? And you might think, well, how am I? How do I feel? What's, generally subconsciously think, what's been happening today? What has just happened and how do I feel? But if we're in an active state, that would never happen. You would, if I said, how are you? You would say something like, I feel profound. I feel ecstatic. I feel peaceful. I feel loving. I feel connected. I feel, we could go down the list of all of the words under the soul column. And the whole idea of this Holy Grail is that we're either choosing or we're reacting. And that is the base, live and kicking. I love it, Venus. Beautiful. This was one of the insights that came to me, and this one actually changed my life. There's a great I think it's a Tibetan or Taoist proverb, and it says, it's better to have lived one day as a lion than 100 years as a sheep. And it's better to have lived one day as a lion than 100 years as a sheep. A little bit strong, but the whole idea is choosing the state that you want to be in, instead of your circumstances determine the state that you're in, or a person pisses you off and makes you feel not so good about something. So this is, again, under the soul column, where we have active conscious thought. You see here. So look at the words, look at under the chat, active. That means I'm choosing. Conscious, I'm conscious about how I am. Thought is the idea within here that's being generated. Intentional is another example of conscious. Varied, it means I'm adjusting it at will. And engagement is I'm engaging it. So that is another example of active conscious. These are all the same words. Stephen wrote, state of be, do, have, not, want, have, be. Yeah, good. Very good. Yep. Glenda, thank you. I appreciate that for sure. So the Holy Grail was a profound experience for me, and it showed me another aspect to soul that I had no idea about. Despite me thinking I was connected, I'm still always expanding, discovering more. When I went to the IANDS conference, I had my own experience where I think, and I could be wrong, I don't know if anyone else here who's had a near-death experience as a baby, but um, I can never get away with anything, ever. I'm in constant awareness of how I am. Julie, same? Yeah, so it's like living a, you know how the, you know, life review? I'm in a constant life review my whole life. If I say anything that is not aligned with soul, in every split second, I feel it. That sucks. I just want you to, that really sucks. Um, and once a person's, I think, had an NDE, I think they're more prone to that. You can't get away with that as easily anymore because now you know better. Michelle, would you agree with that? I think probably, right? So, but so here's the thing. I was at the conference and I had a really a very profound experience. I was in great judgment actually at the conference of someone. Something happened at the conference and I went into judgment. And of course, I'm aware I was in judgment at the time and it felt terrible. And I was so disgusted by my own judgment. Okay, you get to hear inside the mind of me. I don't even know if you want to hear this, but here it is. I was so disgusted by my own judgment that I asked the universe to obliterate, dissolve, disintegrate any judgment I had forever. Now, I didn't really realize what I was asking for. And I went in, TMI, this is on YouTube, this will be forever known. I'll say the whole thing anyway. I went and took a shower, and I don't know, this is with water, you know, sometimes when you're in water, you get these insights. I don't know if anyone, a lot of people say that's true. But I was there and showering, and all of a sudden, the universe spoke to me and said something that affected me ever since. I was basically in tears the whole, like, honestly, I was like bawling. I couldn't stop crying. And it stayed with me ever since. Thank God the crying has stopped. But what the universe said was they don't need your judgment, they need your love. And in that moment, I could feel what that love felt like. And it was so overwhelming. I just started bawling. And this was on like the second day of the conference. So, I mean, I was like, oh my God, I couldn't stop. It was uncontrollable. And I'm thinking, how am I going to go to the conference? Like I actually was at a hotel separate from the conference. I had to walk there. I'm walking to the conference bawling on the street while I'm walking to the conference. I'm thinking, okay, universe, this is not going to work. Like I can't just go into the conference and I'm like walking in and I'm bawling and everyone's wondering what's going to happen. I mean, there was judgment. You can still hear the judgment about myself, about my own crying, right? Can you hear that? So I asked the universe for help with this, and then the universe shifted it. That's what the universe said next. The universe said, they don't need your judgment, they need your light. So my priority shifted from love to light, and all of a sudden I went totally clear. And I could feel that. Sometimes the advantage for those that have had NDEs is you feel the love and light when you've gone over. And honestly, it's beyond human experience. I've had like glimpses of it throughout my life, but I never went full throttle with it like I did there. And it stayed with me ever since. And I can tell you that's what this stream is about. That's what's in the stream. It's just that. And it's always there. And it's never not there. And not only is it never not, it's always there. Not only is it always there, we are so close. So if I say that I can think of something I want in 20 seconds, it shows up, how close do you think you are to this stream? Literally 20 seconds away from the stream. 20 seconds. So,
Hey, Joshua, I'm going to interrupt just real quick.
you're great timing. You're reading my mind.
To let the people know, since we're at an hour and a half, I don't want anyone stressed that needs to leave. So we're going to go over, but I just want anybody who is going to leave to know that we're going to continue this next week with a workshop, which we had planned 2 hours, but based on tonight, maybe we're going to have to tell everybody to plan on 3. Anyway, I just wanted to interrupt just long enough because it's fine for us to go over. I just wanted to make sure that anybody that needs to leave, it's okay. And we will have a replay tomorrow for you to watch. And you can also go in the Hawaiian IANDS Facebook group and watch the replay even tonight. But I just wanted to let anybody know who needs to go, they can go. But hopefully they will join us next week. So, okay, back to the regularly scheduled program.
And I do want to thank you, and I do want to honor really Sean in, like, I'm still new to IANDS, like I'm still new to all this, and Sean is like the sweetest, most giving, loving being. For him to coordinate all of these events, if you saw what he did in the background, it would blow your minds away what he's doing constantly. He comes from he so desires to give the absolute best workshop. Forget about the speaker, okay? I could be crap, but he just wants the whole experience from registration through to the experience through to everything to be as pristine as possible. So I just want to thank Sean, and I also want to thank Dave, Loretta, Susan, and Jack for being a part of this, because otherwise we wouldn't be here talking about this. So I really appreciate all of you for having me. And again, it's unusual for me to do a webinar. In fact, I've never done a webinar like this. So this is, you're seeing me a bit out of my game.
Unfiltered. And
yeah,
it's
exactly.
awesome.
That too. Normally, I only share the stuff that you're hearing with my clients, only people I know, because this stuff is really out there. And it's also very personal in terms of we're getting very deep, intimate, close. And so it is, it's really quite something. So I appreciate all of you being here. I'm happy to answer questions. I don't know if anyone has any. I do see hands up, so I don't know.
Yeah, we do have some questions, but I do want you to finish your thoughts first, because we are going to go over. I just wanted to give, I just don't like people that feel stressed when they have another commitment. So I just wanted to let those people know it's fine to go. And I want you to finish your thoughts, and then we will do questions.
Okay, thanks, Sean. I'm trying to keep us as close to time as possible. If you get to know me, you realize I'm notorious in virtually every workshop. I've given so many workshops in public, and generally, I didn't tell Sean this because I knew he wouldn't have me on, but I go over almost virtually every workshop I've ever given almost in my entire life, and that's like over 2,000.
Well, what you don't realize is I used to always go over. I'm consistently, the reason that I did that is because people have messaged me and said, like, I've only got an hour and a half or 2 hours. And so, yes, so we're very much alike in more ways than just that.
Well,
but, and it's okay. It's okay. I just want to let them know they could leave.
This is so interesting, because this is another quality that I find when I met all these individuals that had near-death experiences, but anyone who's a spiritual person. And to me, someone who's spiritual doesn't mean that they're necessarily aware of spiritual. It means that they're a loving, kind being. And to me, that's spiritual. Someone who's loving and kind. And we want to give so much that sometimes we give way too much time and it overloads everything. So it's like learning how to reel that back a little bit, but it's tricky when you're you want to give. So but
it's all good. So you continue now.
Okay.
Go as long as you want. We'll let people know it's okay to leave if they need to. but
Okay.
you go as long as you want.
I'll share one more pivotal experience, and that was in about 2009. I was exercising and I was watching a movie called August Rush. I highly recommend watching this movie. It's a beautiful film. Robin Williams is in it, and it's about this boy who this baby is given up for adoption, and it turns out that they fast forward in the film, and this boy is like a musical genius. He's like a Mozart, and he ends up, he's like 14. He's a musical genius, and he ends up meeting this guy, and this guy's a musician. And so I'm watching this scene where he's meeting this guy, and the guy is very loving and caring of him and the guy's a guitarist. He's a lead musician in a band. And then you've got this boy who's speaking with him. And I'm watching this, and as I'm watching this, I start feeling something. Something started to move up my chest, moved up into my throat, and all of a sudden, I had a pre-life memory. I remembered my father's and my agreement with each other, called you've heard of this term as a soul agreement. Now, I always thought these were bogus, to be honest, because I never remember. People can talk about a soul agreement, but I never remembered it. So I didn't have my own experience that was real. And then I had this memory. And just so you know the back history on this, I hated my father for 18 years. And I'm not using that term lightly, but I'm not like, I couldn't use that term more strongly. He was the one who's the disciplinarian. He's the one who made us go to do the things that we should do. There was no, there was anything major, but he kind of pushed me to do things that I didn't want to do, like go to school when I was 7, 8, 9, 10. And so the interesting thing was, when I was 18, I had seen another movie called My Life. I don't recommend necessarily that film, but you'll sob your eyes out. But when I saw that movie when I was 18, I kind of released a little bit of my anger towards him. But it was when I had this experience watching August Rush where my system, so I began bawling and I was uncontrollable sobbing. I sound like I cry a lot. That's pretty interesting. I'm just hearing myself now. Anyhow, well, it hasn't happened yet today. We'll see what we can do on this but we still have time apparently. So when that happened and I had that memory, all of a sudden there was not one person on earth I respected more than my father, because I realized he would sacrifice himself every day. He would come down the steps and he'd see me looking at him and hating him. And he would go through life knowing, feeling that I was doing this, but he still chose to kind of give life to me. And so there was not one person that I appreciated more after that than my father. And so all my resistance towards my father was wiped out in literally seconds. And so that was my first kind of soul memory of pre-birth, kind of related to what people talk about when they have NDEs. And I didn't have an NDE there. I was exercising, for goodness sake. So it's called spiritually transformative experience or whatever you want to call it. But it was a memory. So I mention this because I became aware that we all have soul agreements with every single being we interact with. Not only with every being we interact with, we have a soul agreement with every being in the history of humanity. Forward and backwards. And so all of that is coordinated by what we call soul, God, universe, law of attraction. It's all the same. So I just wanted to share that story as a pivotal experience in my life. And I think it's a useful one to talk about in this kind of audience. And I wanted to highlight that I didn't have an NDE with that. I simply remembered it. So these things can happen at any moment. And the more in the stream we are, the more aligned with soul we are, the more these things happen, in my experience. So I think that's good for today. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I would love to answer questions. Um, I really could have spent the whole hour and a half, but we didn't know what questions to ask. So I would have literally spent the whole hour and a half just answering questions. So if you want to pretend I'm a genie in a bottle, and ask any question you like, I'm happy to answer it related to law of attraction, really anything. Sean, how do we do this? Who do we answer?
Yeah, so what we're gonna do is if you guys can put your questions in the chat to me, and then I will ask Joshua. I already have several questions. The first that I want to ask, because what I love, which I already told you, is, this is the holiday time of year, and so many people are struggling with all of that and the relationships. So, so I just think it's perfect that we're doing this at this time of year. So you talked about your relationship with your dad. So how about your relationship with your family? And did you choose your dad? Did you choose your family? And what advice could you have for everybody here who's, the people that are struggling with their family, taking what we've learned today, ego and soul, because, a lot of people are going to be around their family for maybe once a year for this time of year.
I knew that I chose my parents. What I eventually, even years after I had that memory of my soul and my dad's soul communicating, and he decided he would be my father, I would be his son, he would sacrifice, I would, like, I remembered that. It became so much more years later when I realized I chose my bloodline. I chose the structure of my cells. I chose no hair at this stage in my life. I chose, my eyes to look the way they do. I chose every single. Okay, here, let's go deeper. I chose with you to have this experience that we're having now. So when it's one thing for me I can tell you that, but if you don't have the experience of that or memory, it doesn't mean as much. So you can hear me say these words and say this, but I think everyone has to have their own experience to really feel this, to really get what I'm saying. But I can tell you that I think it was Einstein who said either everything is a miracle or nothing is. And either we choose everything or we choose nothing. And everything is everything. It's not, I chose to have this computer, I chose to have this phone, I chose to have this water, I chose to have this shirt. Everything in my experience was chosen. Now it's funny because when you get into law of attraction in Abraham, Abraham doesn't say it exactly like that. They have a different way of saying it. But the way I just stated it is my own personal experience. And so.
Yeah. Okay. And this is going to be a challenge. So the next one that I just said, based on what you just said, and people may have to come to the workshop next week to fully comprehend this. But in order to choose that to accept that you chose, to realize that we have chose all of this and that we're responsible for our lives, that's huge. The ego doesn't like that, right? Like that.
Well, actually,
to me, it was like almost it was not a pleasant experience. So yeah. So what would you say about that?
Let me add something really wild. The ego wants to be the soul. The ego wants perfection. So the ego part of us wants to be the soul. That's why many are so A-type personalities. The A-types are looking for the high, the next high, the next high. It's the highest level. So because we're contending with these two sides of us, that's the challenge, is when, and by the way, that's the ego with the soul. Let's talk about, just in answering your question, how does the soul look at the ego? It loves it. It only loves it. So have you ever heard someone say, oh, wow, well, that person's coming from their ego? You ever heard someone say that about someone else? Maybe you've said it.
Yes.
Well, guess what? That's the ego talking about the other ego. So the soul loves all. It embraces the ego perfectly as it is. It knows it is perfect as it is. It was created perfectly. It serves its purpose perfectly. So now here's the thing. We're either aligned with that part of us that appreciates that, or we're not in sync with that part of us. So we then feel any other emotion reactive to that. You see how that works? And that's the ego chasing its tail, not aware of itself. So all the spiritual work really is, any spiritual work that exists throughout history is about becoming aware of ourselves so we can move out of that ego and more into alignment with who we are. That really is the basis of all spiritual teachings, actually.
So the soul loves the ego, but does the ego love the soul?
The ego, it wants to be the soul. The ego can't love. It craves, yearns, desires, envies. It doesn't love, though. So, the concept of unconditional love, this is a really beautiful teaching. What is conditional love? Conditional love is, I love you so much. You're so much better than my last partner. That's conditional love. Conditional love is, I love you. Will you love me back? That's conditional. Conditional love is, I love you so much. I so much rather be with you than be alone. That's all conditional. What is unconditional love? This is one of the hardest things for us to experience. Unconditional love is, I love you and there is nothing you can do about it. I love you and there's nothing you can do about it. Good luck. Try whatever you want. I'm loving you anyway. Wouldn't that
Yeah, the Course in Miracles actually says that the ego wants to kill. It goes kill you, not only be you, but to kill you. Okay, so so many people, and I'm seeing this, as I told you, with my Facebook groups. So many people are suffering right now because of the holidays, and they've lost a loved one, and a lot of people are considering suicide, which is just awful to see in my groups, these posts. So how can people stay centered after the loss of a loved one? The emotions are so heavy, and we have people here tonight with us struggling, just to stay on Zoom.
It's so 3 years ago, at the height of COVID, in Ontario, Canada, everything was shut down. So the gyms were shut down. Most businesses were shut down. Fortunately, my business was fine, but you couldn't really live, you couldn't go anywhere. In fact, in some cases, we were restricted to going places. And at that time, I felt so bad. I was waking up every day. I felt terrible physically. I was waking up physically and I just felt terrible. My sleep was way off. And I also contemplated leaving my body. But for me, I know I can leave it with my thoughts. So I literally could lie down and just check right out of my body. I know I can do that. In fact, we all can do that, but most people don't know that. So I could pull a Paramahansa Yogananda, if you know who that is. And I could just leave my body. So I said to the universe, universe, I'm going to lie down and I'm not getting up unless you inspire me, unless you come through me and move me into who I am, you support, unless that happens. So I basically decided I was going to lay down and maybe never get up again. And literally after like 3 hours, I didn't move out of my body. I was just hanging out there and contemplating going to the other side, returning to the other side. And then all of a sudden, I heard the universe speak to me about this. And it said, if you were to die today, where would you choose to do it? On Earth. And of course, we couldn't leave Canada. So the question was, where would you go in Canada to live out your last day? And so I realized Vancouver, British Columbia was like beautiful. If you haven't been there, I highly recommend traveling there. And I realized, you know what? I've been holding off for years going there. It's like the equivalent of Hawaii, like in Canada. It's beautiful. And yeah, and so in that moment, I made the decision that I would go to BC. I would drive across Canada, which I'd never done before. And in that moment, I also realized if I don't do something about my physical body, I'm going to start to have disease and other things because I just felt so bad. And the gyms were closed here, but the gyms were open in BC. So I decided that I was going to transform my physical body, even if it killed me. And I had injuries from like 12 years prior with my shoulders and my knees, which made it really difficult for me to do certain weightlifting and so on. And I said, I don't care if I destroy myself. I'm going to BC and I'm going to drive across. I'm going to fill my car, my luxury car, which looks ridiculous. Here's me driving in my luxury car with it filled to the roof inside my car of all my belongings. And I hired the top trainer in British Columbia. And on my way across Canada, I had the most profound experiences in every place that I stopped. It was like magic wonderland everywhere I went. I got to BC. I started working with a trainer. I completely rehabilitated my body. I had magic happen every day. And that decision was one of the best things that I did. Why am I saying this? Because I hit this extreme low point and I was catapulted to the highest of highs through that experience. I personally would never take my life in any unnatural way. And to me, natural means I just leave my body. So I won't ever do that. I don't feel like that's a way of honoring me in any way. So I won't do that. But we can get so far out of alignment with the stream that the only way to feel relief is by terminating our life somehow. The craziest part, the thing that blows my mind, which I also know, is that going from here to here can happen in seconds. Anyone can go from here to here in seconds. So we are holding ourselves back just from 20 seconds always, our whole life. Okay, I'm going to say it this clearly. If you're not in romance and you wanted romance, literally holding back romance for however long you've held it back, it's literally 20 seconds away. It's only 20. Why am I saying 20 seconds? Abraham says 17 seconds. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept. But if you're not, it's okay. I can just tell you from my experience and with my clients, 20 seconds. Anything we want can happen in 20 seconds. My dad, who couldn't cook at all, I'm sure, I don't know, this would be really weird if my dad watches this video and gets back to me because he wouldn't know about 99% of this. But my dad couldn't cook at all, like zero. Like he could make tuna salad and he could hard boil eggs. And that was the extent of his cooking. And when he turned 65, he's 75 now, when he turned maybe 62, literally something flipped overnight. He became a master cook and chef in 24 hours. His first recipe was a tiramisu. His first recipe. And it was perfect on the first shot. And it's like he became a cooking, baking savant overnight. And all of a sudden, he was just, I say that in a loving way, he just became masterful in one day. So how do you explain that? At 65, he totally, when you can see people do when we see people, this happen to people, it shows you any one of us can become Mozart today. Any one of us can become millionaires today. Any one of us can have peace today. Any one of us at any moment. It does require a little bit of focus. A little bit of focus. And that little bit of focus starts with a choice, a decision. When I went to BC, I made the decision, and then I had all these profound things happen. And now my knees are the best they've been my entire life. I used to play competitive tennis. When I was 7, I had creaky knees. My knees now are like bulletproof. Better than they've ever been. My cardiovascular shape is the best it's ever been my entire life. And I used to play, again, with competitive tennis. I was able to totally shift my body. Hair might be the next thing that I'm working on, and I already know the discovery of that. So anyone who wants to grow my hair, I'm a master on that as well. And so just saying, it's coming. So next, maybe in a video, maybe in 5 months from now, you'll see a little bit more.
Okay, so let's go back though. That was a wonderful answer. But if you could give this lady a 1-sentence soundbite, which of course is challenging, but so how can she stay centered after the loss of a loved one, especially at this time of the year? Because she can't drive across Canada right now.
What's her
and
name?
Get a life coach.
What's her name?
That'll take me a second.
That's okay.
That will take a
I see Melissa. It could be Melissa.
Yeah, well, you know what? Whoever asked me that question, raise your hand, because
that's a good
I
idea.
just write down the questions.
Is that Kathy? Is it Kathy?
Whoever's, well, not you know what? Whoever did ask the question, do a thumbs up, because we already have some other people with their hands up.
Oh yeah,
so do a thumbs up, and that will help.
Just checking. Maybe she's not here.
Yeah, she might not be. Well, yeah, but it's a great question.
Is it Nicole?
Is it Nicole? If it's you, nod your head.
It is Nicole. I think.
Okay, great.
Or she's saying goodbye. Or tell me what it is. Okay.
Well, you know what? It doesn't matter, because there's lots of people that have lost a loved one, and at this time of year. So, what would be the general question?
So, I mean, I have another. I'm going to ask it this. I'm going to ask this question in this way. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, okay? Whoever this is. Number 1, what do you think your loved one would want you to feel? Do you think that loved one would want you to feel sad or down, or would that no, they'd want you to feel joyful and loving, even loving. You know, when we feel, here's the irony, is that when we feel loss, we don't feel love. You can't feel love and loss at the same time. There's loss and there's love. Loss and love. So my first question would be that. What would that, and I would remind yourself of that consistently for a little while. And it's okay. It's okay.
That's actually a perfect one-line answer. Connect with
the
love.
But I want to add a couple more, because I'm sure there's lots of other people here. I can tell you, like, I don't do a ton of mediumship, but I typically do see spirits who've transitioned. I have never, ever, ever seen a spirit that has transitioned that doesn't want the individuals that are still here to not be in joy and bliss. Any soul that has ever moved over, no matter how they're doing over there, and usually it's pretty good, by the way, in most cases it's amazing, they want us to prosper. They want us to experience gorgeousness because they know they're going to see us at some point. They don't feel bad for us. They feel excited. In fact, they know that we're still here for a reason. And so if you can connect internally within yourself and feel, how do I think he or that person would want me to feel, that's a really good start. And knowing that they really only, again, you're just gonna have to take my word for this, or you can really, you, Nicole, you know that individual so well, you know how that, and by the way, when they go to the other side, and Michelle Claire is here, and she's like a top psychic medium. I love Michelle. She's like profoundly incredible at psychic mediumship. So feel free to, she didn't pay me, I promise. She's not, but her workshop is coming up in January. Or her speakers event. But even in the absence of connecting through someone, you can tune into that person who's transitioned. And I can tell you the peace that they have is profound on the other side. So you don't ever have to worry about the other being at all. They're in a great place. But if you're still here, it means there are still beautiful things for you here. The whole idea of heaven on earth is aligning with the flow. We can do that and experience heaven on earth. And by the way, just because you feel good doesn't mean that he's not still going to be supporting you every second of every day.
Right. And you know, and really the simple answer is connect with love, and to be in the here and now, not with who they used to be, not with who they were when they were alive, but here and now, connect with the love. That's how you're grounded, just because that's all there really is the present.
Thank you.
So yeah. Okay. So because I don't want to wear out people. So we have worn out a lot of people tonight. So
I think we're good for a few more minutes. Oh
yeah, no, I just want to make sure that everyone's questions are answered. And so what's kind of interesting is so here's one. So if there's reincarnation, are we connected to the same souls every earthly lifetime over and over again? For instance, will my mom be with me in another earthly lifetime as a different relationship?
Not necessarily. This is quite unusual, actually, which I came to discover through a friend. I had gone to Sedona to do a method that is my number 2 method. So I love law of attraction. I use that strongly in my work. And I also use the Sedona method. I'm a big fan of the Sedona method. So shout out to Held Waskin of the Sedona method. And feel free to look up that book. It's about letting go of emotion, like dropping a pen out of your hand. It's effortless releasing, and letting go of pain, letting go of physical issues. So it's actually it's beautifully eloquent. And I remember attending that workshop. I did a 7-day advanced training, and there was a woman in that group who was so gifted as a clairvoyant. She could see your thoughts, like she could see all of your thoughts. So she worked for she was in IT, and then she was meditating every day, and all of a sudden her third eye, I call it, I came up with this idea, it fused open. And when I say fused open, it means she could see everything. So she'd look at you, she'd see all of your past future lives all at once. She'd see everything. And so she's the greatest kind of seer I've ever met. And she was in Sedona to let go, to release all of her past life traumas. So it was crazy. It was like, oh my God, it was extreme. And so long story short, she and I became close friends. I love that she could do all this. And to me, it was like a superhero. I'm watching like a Marvel, it was like she belonged in a Marvel comic book film or a DC. If you like DC, it was like she belonged in a DC comic book film because she had these capabilities that were mind-blowing to me. And she introduced me to the idea that I was a guide in a previous lifetime, which I had no memory of that. So long answer short, sometimes we are in the same time space experience in physical, and sometimes we might actually be a guide or a supporter. The really weird part, really wild part, which I've discovered about myself, which is it, honestly, I don't know how far we want to go into this, but virtually every child that meets me connects with me. I've had children that, like, if you watch me go into a room of children, they become transfixed on me. Like the parents are like, what's wrong? Why are they looking at, like, literally? And I've had kids who say they remember me from pre-life that I don't have that recollection, but they do. And so they remember me when I was on the other side, when they were in physical form and I was on the other side. So we don't necessarily reincarnate together in every lifetime. In fact, we don't in many lifetimes. But we may be each other's guides or supporters in different lifetimes. So that's long answer short.
Right. And there's also that saying, become as little children. And in many ways, you are. And so they can connect with you that way. So basically, this is going to bring us to the last questions, which ironically, you will be addressing next week because they want to know how. And so
I can summarize this actually.
Yeah, bear with me a sec and let me.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so they basically want to know what specifically do we do to get in the flow and stream, and how do we move from ego to soul?
So this is truly the basis of next workshop. And I'm going to really do my best to be more on time next time. But out of all the wisdom that exists on the planet, you don't have to attend next workshop to get this, okay? The essence of the Abraham material is it's one message. Feel good. Just feel good. Choose to feel good about everything that you can think of. Find good feeling thoughts. So for example, Nicole, if we're thinking about your husband, is that husband? Does it feel better to think about the incredible things of, or partner, sorry, I'll say partner. Does it feel better to feel good about those things or to look at the things that are missing, right? Like it's almost a no-brainer there. It just takes a little bit of focus to say, okay, what do I, right? And that practice will set you free. And why not do that about everything? So a sample exercise that I love is, what are my 5 favorite things? So here's an example. We're on this webinar. What are your 5 favorite things about this webinar? Even if it's been a terrible webinar and you're not sure what to think of, come up with 5 favorite things. I love Sean's smile. He is just so, look at his smile, for God's sakes. Like, it's so authentic. I mean, that would be an easy favorite. I could say I love his background. Like, look, I mean, I'm in Toronto. I'm looking at that background. I want that. Like, I love the background. I love everyone's openness. I love that everyone who's still here is still here and stayed this long. I mean, I can keep coming up with positive after good feeling thoughts. And that really is the ticket to going from here into here. So that's a quick summary of how do you do that. We're going to do lots of other exercises And Dave, love you, man. That's very sweet. You're a smooth operator. If I had Sade, I'd put her on right now, but love it. So yeah, exactly. Glenda, I love the happiness I've got. I thank you for that. Abraham Hicks, Liz, it's Abraham Hicks, Hicks. And you can go to YouTube, type in Abraham Hicks and any topic that you want to expand into. Abraham Hicks money, Abraham Hicks romance, whatever. This is not a paid advertisement for Abraham Hicks, but to me, Abraham is source speaking through, is God, universe, love speaking through. And so I believe that any one of us that is doing this work, the concept of a light worker means that a light worker is coming from the stream when we are of service to others. We are striving to be in this stream as much as possible when we are helping and supporting others. Why not do that all day? Why, right?
Beautiful. And I want to add that that's the only time we really are connected with soul, is when we are in joy and
right.
love. That's the only time.
That's it.
And I want to thank you so much, Joshua. And I want to thank everybody who has stuck with us all night. And it's truly been a magical, wonderful evening. And I just want to tell everybody who is on YouTube or Facebook, please share your thoughts in the chat. Share what you think, how you define spirituality, and share with us your thoughts tonight, because it's truly interactive. And also, if you enjoyed our discussion, please make sure that you subscribe to Hawaiian IANDS and like and comment on Joshua's talk tonight. And we have a new speaker every Tuesday, first Tuesday of the month, which will be Michelle Claire, January 2nd in our new year. So that's all exciting. And also to remind everybody, we rely upon donations to keep all of our meetings free. So please go to hawaiianians.com and share whatever you feel guided to share to help us keep our meetings free. And the biggest message we all want to share tonight is, remember, love is the only thing that matters. No matter if you've had an NDE or not, at the end of the day, really, love is what matters. And so thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for Joshua again. I'm so grateful to you, and I'm excited for next week to see what happens. So again, thank you, everyone. Aloha, have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next week.